He has waited a long time for this moment. At the age of 74, he finally takes up the job for which he was born. And the best thing is, Camilla, the love of his life, is at his side and is crowned with him as queen. Why the two are such a good fit, also astrologically, is what this video is about. Now, Charles stood in the shadow of his famous mother, the Queen, all his life. And monarch isn't a job like any other where you just retire. You have it for life.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Much has been speculated about the relationship between the Queen and her eldest son. She had been cold, always absent, had never supported the sensitive child. Well, maybe there is something to it, but there are also indications that the two got along well. As usual, the truth is not black and white. In any case, the relationship between father and son was way more difficult. Philip was a macho, as he is in the book, and always had to fight his way the hard way. He wanted his son to be a real man, a man's man, not a wimp. Charles got emotional support from his grandmother, the Queen Mum, and his great-uncle, Lord Louis Mountbatten. Well, before we get to the astrological part of my video, a little hint. Some of you may be advanced in the art of horoscope analysis, some are at an intermediate level, others are beginners. It's hard to please everyone. So, for those of you who are beginners, just, relax and let yourself get inspired. When interpreting a natal chart, it always makes sense to first examine the ascendant, sun and moon. The ascendant says something about how we work on the outside and approach life. Charles has Leo rising, a proud sign that likes to be in the center of attention and wants to be admired. The sun says something about our essence, our conscious personality traits. In addition, the sun can say something about what our relationship with the father was like. The sun is in Scorpio, a sign that is rather cautious and suspicious and needs a lot of trust before it shows itself. The moon says something about what we need to feel emotionally secure and how we instinctively react to our environment. The moon also gives information about our relationship with the mother. Moon in Taurus needs a lot of security and likes its habits. It doesn't like change. Everything should stay as it is. In the 10th house, which stands for vocation and the social position in life, the Taurus moon indicates that Charles is dutiful. Leo, Scorpio and Taurus are so-called fixed signs, and they are all about preservation and stability, about endurance and maturation, and not so much about action or flexible adaptation to the living conditions. Pluto, the planet that stands for power struggles in the horoscope, is in the first house, so in addition to the ascendant sign, influences the way Charles comes across. In this case, as a sort of echo effect on the sun in Scorpio, whose ruler is Pluto, a desire for control is added, which can take on compulsive elements since the sun and Pluto are in the tense square aspect to each other. Charles's sun has a conjunction with Chiron, which stands for wounds in the chart. Charles is known for being very sensitive and easily offended, which is not always easy when you are exposed to public scrutiny. Venus gives clues to social contacts, aesthetics and women. With Charles, she is in Libra, her own sign by the way, so very dominant. Refined manners are super important here. On Venus stands Neptune, the planet that stands for longing and symbiosis. Venus and Neptune are at the lowest point in the horoscope, the IC, which means home and family, an indication that Charles likes to retire to pursue beautiful things. Mars, on the other hand, stands in a man's horoscope for his masculinity and generally for our way of asserting ourselves. For Charles, Mars is in Sagittarius, which means sporty, idealistic, and ambitious. Athletically, Charles was able to let off steam playing polo, but otherwise his room for maneuver was very limited as Prince of Wales. The descendant is in Aquarius. The ruler of the sign, which stands at the cusp of the 7th house, the house of partnerships, gives information about what one unconsciously hopes for from a partnership. Well, with Charles, Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, stands in house 11, the house of friends, wishes, and like-minded people. A partner should also be a friend with similar interests. Lilith, the black moon, can stand in a man's horoscope for the power he gives to the women in his life, what powers he admires in them, or rather perceives as threatening. In the harmonious trine aspect to his sun, this constellation says that Charles is attracted to strong women and has good access to his feminine side himself. So, let's summarize. Astrologically speaking, Charles has dispositions that are quite contradictory. On the one hand, there is the part that is proud and ambitious, sporty and interested in many things. On the other hand, he has to struggle with powerlessness, limitations, and his great desire for everything beautiful in life is hindered by duty and caution. He wants to be private and yet has to be in the public eye all the time. Well, we all know that Charles and Diana didn't fit together and that the marriage was a disaster. I'm making my own video about this. But now let's get to Camilla and discuss why she was the ideal woman behind the scenes and how remarkable it is that she is now stepping out of the shadows at an advanced age. Camilla's and Charles' story actually begins more than 100 years ago because Camilla's great-great-grandmother and Charles' great-great-grandfather were also connected. Edward VII, who had to wait until he was 60 years old before his mother, Queen Victoria, died and he was allowed to ascend to the throne, was a difficult contemporary. Everything he did was excessive. He drank, ate, smoked, partied, played, and enjoyed himself wherever he could. He also had tremendous wear and tear on women. By the end of his life, however, his health was suffering, and he needed a mistress who understood his needs and could curb his temper tantrums. Alice Capel was married just like Edward, but was his steady lover for many years. The press tactfully concealed this affair. Alice Capel inherited a handsome fortune from which her descendants, including Camilla Shand, profited. Camilla, unlike Charles, had a happy childhood. Financially independent, adventurous, and full of life, the ambitious young woman wanted one thing above all: to catch Andrew Parker Bowles, a rich playboy. When she had him almost at the ready, she met Charles. The two had their first brief affair, which apparently meant more to Charles than Camilla. But just before the relationship could flourish any further, the royal family stepped in before it was too late. Camilla was piggy in the middle between Andrew and Charles was sent off to the Caribbean to be out of the way. But why was Camilla so ill-suited? Well, basically, she had 3 flaws. Firstly, she wasn't really beautiful, which, by the way, no one was more aware of than herself, and Charles certainly wouldn't have agreed. Secondly, she was not really high enough the aristocratic pecking order to marry the future king. And thirdly, she was no longer a virgin. This all sounds archaic and misogynistic, but That's how the cookie crumbled. Camilla got her dream wedding with Andrew Parker Bowles in 1973 and started a family. Charles became the most desirable bachelor of the 1970s with endless affairs and girlfriends, but without really any sense of enthusiasm. Soon it became clear he and Camilla had resumed their liaison, and she felt comfortable in this role, as she had the best of both worlds. We all know what happened next, and as Diana said so beautifully,
Well, there were three of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Diana became a saint after her death, and Charles could count on little sympathy. His greatest wish to finally marry Camilla had to wait a few more years, and Camilla, who was vilified as an adulteress during Diana's lifetime, had a particularly hard time. But time heals all wounds, and now everyone seems to have gotten used to the two as a couple. But what does Camilla's birth chart have to say about all this? It's particularly striking that Camilla, just like Charles, has a Leo ascendant, that Saturn and Pluto are in the first house and therefore influence the way it works, how she comes across. We will come to in a moment, one step at a time. But with the Sun and Moon in Cancer, she is, which one would probably not assume from the outside, a soft, sensitive person who loves to provide for, care, and be there for others. The 12th house in the horoscope is the most mysterious house. It stands for everything behind the scenes, retreat, secrecy, fantasy and dream, closed institutions and secret enemies, just to name a few areas. Let's face it, Camilla is an enigma, a mysterious figure. No one really knows what she is like, the ideal woman in the background. Cancer is a maternal sign, and the full 12th house fits well to a partner who has Charles's back. One of the many problems in marrying Diana was that she stole the show from him wherever they appeared. A huge insult for Charles, who needs a lot of confirmation. She's not a woman who does necessarily seek the spotlight, and she's not vain, and she doesn't need to prove to others that she's great. The fact that she was nevertheless involved in this huge drama through Charles, which has relaxed only in recent years, and now culminates in her, who had always valued her privacy so much, becoming queen, is nothing short of mind-blowing, most of all to herself. A dream come true? Or rather, a nightmare come true? Well, she really has to love him to take all this upon herself. Moon and Venus stand together in Cancer in house 12, a maternal, domestic femininity that also brings playful elements. Again, something you can hardly imagine of Camilla. In a challenging square aspect with Neptune in house 3, the house of communication and social network, a kind of indefinable, barely tangible effect arises, like standing in fog. On the other hand, many people report that Camilla is very sympathetic and unobtrusive, very different from what one had imagined. Camilla had a happy childhood and has good self-confidence. With Sun at a favorable trine angle to Jupiter, the planet of expansion, happiness, faith and inspiration, she always has a full tank of optimism. Well, presumably not always. But remember, Charles, with his Sun in conjunction with Chiron, the wound in the horoscope, he is so different and needs a strong partner who believes in herself and in him. Diana, on the other hand, didn't have a particularly stable self-esteem and would also have needed a male Camilla. With Saturn, the planet that stands for limitation, discipline, maturation and hardness in the first house, it comes as no surprise that Camilla can come across as reserved and can often look even coarse. But there is also Pluto, the control and power planet next to Saturn, and reinforces this impression. This makes for an intense effect and has to polarize, but Charles was attracted to her from the very beginning. Camilla's Lilith, who in a woman's horoscope stands for which female taboos to break and where you have to assert yourself as a woman against men and competing women, is in Capricorn, the sign of authority. In the 6th house, duties, everyday life and service. Lilith stands for a woman who is challenged in her everyday life. For over 40 years, Camilla has been in the center of public attention, although she would have preferred it so much if she had remained in the background. The tense opposition aspect of 180 degrees to Mercury and Sun in the private 12th house challenges Camilla no end. She can only remain private to a certain extent, and her everyday life is severely criticized. She was an adulteress, a competitor to Diana, who was adored by everybody. And let's face it, many simply did not understand what Charles found in her. Well, in addition, Camilla was married for a long time herself. But after the famous Tampon Gate scandal in January 1993, in which a phone call between Charles and Camilla was intercepted and published, and Charles revealed that he would prefer to be Camilla's tampon, Andrew Parker Bowles had enough and divorced Camilla. Now, let's have a look at the synastry of Charles and Camilla. First of all, it really strikes me that their axes are almost identical, which means that their outlook in life, how they approach life, what their goals in life are, how they are perceived by others, what their family values are, and so on and so forth, are very similar. Also, Charles's Scorpio sun stands in trine to Camilla's Cancer sun, a very harmonious angle. Her Saturn adds to his Pluto in the 1st house, giving him strength. The fact that the two get along together so fantastically boils down to the fact that her Moon Venus conjunction is in a trine to his Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication. But to top it off, her Jupiter sits on his Sun. And this, of course, is the most important aspect between the two of them, because she really believes in him. She supports him. She gives his life a meaning. This is by large one of the best aspects between two horoscopes which can happen. Alright, so now we hopefully understand a wee bit better how Camilla and Charles attract each other and how this works out by way of their horoscopes. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little video. You will subscribe to my channel, and if you feel like it, do watch other videos that I made.